I'm thrilled to welcome Devin Amundsen to the show. Devin is a canine behavior educator known for translating behavioral science and stress physiology into practical guidance for foster caregivers and shelters. His work focuses on nervous system regulation, stress stacking, and how timing affects a dog's ability to learn. Hi, and welcome to Dog Fostering 101. I'm Jackie Adams, foster mom and learning and development professional. This podcast is for anyone who's new to fostering, thinking about saying yes for the first time, or navigating those early days and looking for practical tips, because fostering changes lives at both ends of the leash. Devin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So for fosters who maybe haven't heard this term before, what does stress stacking actually mean from a nervous system perspective? So not just behaviorally, also psychologically.
Yeah, this comes up a lot when we're talking about dogs coming out of the shelter and into foster homes. We talk quite a bit about stress stacking, or trigger stacking is the other way you'll hear it or see it online if you're doing some of your own searching around for resources. What we're talking about is the body, receives information and takes on stress, and that stress is a biological thing, right? It's cortisol, it's adrenaline, it's serotonin, it's dopamine, it's oxytocin, it's all these things happening in the body. But what trigger stacking or what stress stacking is when that that cortisol builds up, that adrenaline builds up and has nowhere to go. And so it just hangs around in the body, and it hangs on, and it creates this tension, and it creates this like baseline where we are on edge all the time. So really, really important for fosters to keep in mind that any version of stress can contribute to this stress stacking. It doesn't have to be negative or like something I perceive as bad.
So, and I just realized, going off of what you just said, and I keep making this mistake, I said psychologically, but I should have said physiologically because it's what you're feeling in your body. Am I getting that correct too?
Yeah, I totally heard you say physiologically, so I got what you meant. But yeah, we are talking about like a physiological response to stress, which is really just a challenge, right? Stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Stress is me encountering something that's difficult. And that could be something that I enjoy doing, which is like talking to people, or I'm not naturally I'm not naturally like a presenter kind of person. This is a learned skill. So this is stressful for me, but it's a stress that I enjoy. It's a challenge that I enjoy. But I have things in place for me afterwards to help myself release that stress. Right? I've got some tea, I've got some time dedicated to just sitting down and taking some deep breaths. All of these things are really important for making sure that stress doesn't stick around for longer. So I don't go into my next meeting feeling really tense and feeling the same stress from that previous interaction, regardless of how much I enjoyed it.
Okay, so just so I'm tracking on this, would we consider stacking good, bad? As a new foster, how should I look at that terminology when I'm hearing it being spoken about?
Yeah. Generally speaking, when we're talking about stress stacking, we're talking about the negative sort of impact of this. We're talking about something I'm trying to avoid. I want to give opportunities for that stress to be released from the body. I want to give it somewhere to go. I don't want to hold on to it, especially over prolonged periods of time, which can cause much bigger problems.
Okay. And so when I'm looking at taking that and putting it into the actual behaviors that I'm doing with my dog, what as a new foster should I keep in mind so that that dog can have some of that relief so that that stress doesn't mount up?
Yeah. I think a huge part of this, and I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but a huge part of this is setting appropriate expectations for this new foster coming into your home. They just came out of what is likely the most stressful situation they've ever been in. Even if they were not in the shelter for a long period of time, they were separated from their daily routine. They were separated from their previous relationships, their previous bonds. So that is very stressful in a very negative way. There's no positive version of that stress. So setting expectations and saying, hey, we may go for a very short walk for the first 2 weeks. We're planning on going for just sort of down the street and back, and there's a lot of sniffing during those walks. We're not doing, adoption events on week 1. We're not doing, unless your shelter has a setup for that. I don't want to create a blanket rule. That's not fair. But we're kind of keeping things really low excitement for the first couple of weeks of this foster dog being in your home. I don't want to overwhelm them with too much of a challenge.
Great. And we do make sure that we have covered in past episodes 333. We've had a couple of authors come in and talk about the importance of it. I feel like I've personally gone through this when, in my ignorance, with some of my foster dogs when I was really excited about how well they were progressing. And so I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Well, why don't we do this? And it's like when they were showing positive results, then I kept changing where the bar was at. And I noticed sometimes we would hit a wall, or sometimes things with training would be maybe I was doing, smaller snippets of training and everything was going well. But after a couple of days, maybe we, again, just weren't making the same progress like we had been up to that point. Can you speak a little bit about what that looks like and why that happens?
Absolutely. We see this kind of both sides of this in the foster world, and I see it in just the public dog training side of things that I'm doing a lot more of these days. Um, People are constantly setting the bar a little bit higher. It is a natural human thing to want to keep pushing a little bit, keep finding new areas for improvement, and keep finding new success. Right? That's a normal human thing to do. But for the dog, they're not necessarily opting into those same goals that you are. They were like, hey, I'm here and I haven't bitten anybody in the last 24 hours. I'm doing great. And I'm looking at it like, well, I want to get you into a home. I want to get you meeting these people. So we do tend to kind of increase that bar a little bit faster than many dogs are probably comfortable with. So it's always good to keep that in mind as a new foster, that your goal, it might feel really lofty out the gate. It might feel like we're going to go home, we're going to meet 100 people, and we're going to go to adoption events, and I'm going to take you to Petco, and I'm going to write like all these things. Really, expectation, and what I try to tell my fosters, especially my new fosters, is what I want is for this dog to be safe, happy, and healthy. That's it. No further expectations. Let's get settled into the home a little bit, and then we'll sort of revisit some new goals, and we'll sort of all mutually agree on what those goals are. So goal setting is really huge for fosters, and I would encourage new fosters to come in with as low of goals as possible. Like I said, safe, happy, and healthy is what I'm going for the dogs.
Yeah, this reminds me of another interview that we did recently with Fear Free. And I had Dr. Jennifer Merlot on, and we were talking about consent with the dogs. And in my past of being, having a puppy, I never considered the idea that this is an agreement. We're touching base with each other, that we're both coming in this together. I thought, I am the human, you are the animal, and I'm just projecting
Yeah.
myself. But I love what you're saying about goals, and then also kind of having that touching base, having that trust building up point and that continuous check in, that level of respect there in that relationship.
Absolutely. It's a huge thing that I'm talking about more and more these days with dog owners, and definitely with fosters, volunteers, and even shelter staff that are working with the dogs in the kennels. Talking about consent is so important, and the idea of both of us opting into this interaction is so important. When we're talking about, the new foster dog coming in, and like I get that everybody wants to say hi and everybody wants the dog to come up to them, but there's so much value, and there's such a I find it so fun and so beautiful to like make the dog be the first one to make physical contact with you. Right? Don't reach out to go pet the dog. Make the dog come up and get the dog, right? Use your body language. I'm going to start wiggling quite a bit here, because that's how we do it, is like I come up and I'm wiggling around a little bit like, hey, what are you doing? Come over here. Come on, come say hi. Right? Like invite that. And on the human side, truly invite that. It's not a command. It's not come over here and lean against my leg. It's, hey, would you like to come over here for attention? Would you like to go for a walk today? Would you like to go investigate outside? Would you like to sniff? Right? There's so many choices available for dogs that really don't cost me anything. right? Do you want to sniff on the walk is a great option. That it cost me a little bit of time during my walk, but maybe we have a shortened walk. So going back to those expectations, we have a shorter walk because my foster dog chooses to sniff quite a bit.
And in my past, again, I'm going to come off as I was very ignorant in my past. I never thought about that as a form of enrichment, that I'm getting, exercise or getting exposure to new things. But also now that I've used the snuffle mats and
Yeah.
treat puzzles with my dog, something I would have never used in the past, I'm exploring these enrichment opportunities as a way to bring about that better behavior so that they don't feel the need to necessarily do some of these destructive behaviors that might still come out, but might be a lot less than if I hadn't given those options for engagement, like sniffing when we're out on exploratory walks.
Sniffing is huge. I mean, I just took my personal dog yesterday to kind of a small town downtown area, and in my mind, I kind of showed up and said, "We'll go for a walk and we'll get moving quite a bit." But we got out of the car and he wanted to just sniff, and so we didn't make it very far. We went, like maybe 3 blocks or something, and it was all just sniffing, and it was all him leading the way. And there were some rules to the walk. He wasn't allowed to yank on the leash and
Mm-hmm.
really be pulling on me too much. But he was allowed to just kind of, you lead the way here. You tell me what's interesting because I can't smell it. And he was exhausted. And he's still this morning a little bit exhausted. So coming back to that stress stacking, right? That was stress. That was good stress. It was a challenge for him to be in this downtown area. And that exhausted him into today, into this morning, even though it was a good experience. It was a fun time. He loved sniffing around and asking if he could pick things up off the ground, which the answer is always no. But
You got to try.
you got to ask, right?
You
We've
got
got
to
a
shoot
back
your
and forth.
shot.
Yeah. He's like, can I pick up this food? I'm like, definitely don't touch that food. What about this food wrapper? Nope, definitely not that either. Here's some treats that I've got over here, right? Here's your alternative.
Nice call. So I have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that talking about what's going on in the dog's body here, that the same stress system gets activated, whether they're excited or whether they're fearful. If that is true, can you help me understand what that looks like from the dog's body language and or body standpoint, and how that should affect how we engage with a dog, knowing that?
Yeah. Um, I actually, I'll definitely call myself out here. I only started really deeply understanding this and really maybe not communicating effectively, but really understanding it for myself when I started to reflect on what anxiety feels like in my body and what excitement feels like in my body. Those two things feel very similar. And it can be really confusing sometimes for me as a human being who has constructs to talk about these things, who has ways to talk about anxiety and excitement. So when I started kind of examining it in myself and then started applying it to dog training and what I was seeing in the dogs, I was like, are you excited or are you anxious? And do you know the difference? Because your body, I can tell you from my personal experience as somebody who can kind of self reflect and can kind of take track of what's happening in my body. I can tell you that it's confusing for me. So I'm looking at the dog experiencing those two things, going, I'm going to have to help this dog out and help them navigate this in this nonverbal way, in this like very physiological sort of way of how what is going on in the body, what does adrenaline feel like, what does cortisol feel like, and then the flip side of that, what does oxytocin feel like, what does that bonding hormone feel like, what is dopamine, what does the dopamine system feel like, what does serotonin feel like in the gut, right? Like what do these things feel like and how do they kind of interact with one another, and what do I need when it's kind of how I think about when I'm going into a case and I'm looking at a dog. I'm like, if I was feeling that right now, what might make me feel better, right? If I'm feeling like my heart's racing and my hands are a little bit sweaty and there's sort of a lot going on around me, what might make me feel better in that moment? And what might make me feel better is somebody that I know saying, hey, Devin, you okay? Do you want to come take a step over here? Do you want to take some deep breaths over off to the side for a minute? And so I try to find ways for the dog to get that same experience of like, hey, you know me, you trust me. Do you want to come over here? You want to come this way or do you want to come this way? Right? We can start to introduce these choices that both choices are good here. Both of them are going to get you out of the situation. Do you want to go this way or do you want to go that way? Do you want to sniff, or do you want to look at me? Do you want to sniff for some treats, or do you just want to sniff the ground? Because I have no idea what's there. You know what's there on the ground. So
Yeah.
those, yeah,
And I've recently started this practice myself. Of there was one time, and I think my sisters, who I'm very close with, one of them did ask me the question: Are you nervous, scared? Are you excited, nervous? And that helped me understand where I was at and adjust my behaviors accordingly. So I can completely relate to what you're saying when we're taking it to dogs. Since I like to be very practical about this, I hear you talking about what you're saying makes sense in practical terms, taking them maybe a little bit, going to a slightly different area. Another thing I've attempted to do myself is I've heard that long, soothing pats, not the scruffing up the back, etc., can also be another way to help naturally calm down the body. Is there anything else that fosters should keep in mind if there's a period of excitement besides those two tips that they can do to help their pups regulate?
yeah. This is where I love to play as a behavior consultant. I love to discover this with the dog, really, because the dog doesn't know what things make them feel good. So I have to discover those with the dog. So this is going to be totally individual for every dog. And I don't ever want to make like a blanket recommendation that all dogs benefit from sniffing. While that's usually true, there's going to be cases where that's not quite true. But when I think about like, those slow pets, or even like a little bit of the kind of slow pets down the side, and maybe a little bit of I want to say like compression, like a little bit of a gentle squeeze on the shoulder blades, right? Like a little bit of almost like a hug, but I don't want to say hug because I'm not implying like go in there and chest to chest and wrap your arms around the dog. It's not what we're talking about, but a little bit of that slow, deeper pressure, um, some gentle pets on the chest, but kind of going back to that previous point about consent. Is that really what the dog wants right now? Or is that going to be really overwhelming? Because even if I do enjoy hugs from people that I'm close to, in certain moments when I'm feeling really overwhelmed, those hugs don't feel relaxing like I know that they should. They don't feel like connection. They actually feel like disconnection because you're not really reading what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is some space, and what I'm asking for is to take a couple deep breaths by myself. So I want to give dogs both options. I want to say, do you want to come over here and get some slow, kind of gentle petting? Or do you want to go over here and sniff? Or do you want to be done with this whole situation? Am I looking at you like, hey, let's go home and take a little while just by yourself? Hang out in the crate with something to work on, something to chew on. Do you need a toy right now that you can shake a toy? Do you want to run around for a minute? Like, can we go in the backyard, let you off leash, and just encourage you to move your body? Um, Kind of, again, for me, go when in doubt, I sort of go back to what are some things that I do to shake off that stress. And I'm talking about physiologically, what do I do to shake off stress? And how can I recreate that for the dog? So movement, deep breaths, which is really sniffing. We can teach dogs to take deep breaths on cue, but that's a training thing and not for introduction. That's not like week 1 and 2 as a foster. That's like year 3 and 4 as a dog trainer.
Oh, wow.
But providing opportunities to sniff is, I tell clients, it's kind of like asking you to take 3 deep breaths in through the mouth, or in through the nose and out through the mouth. I can do the same thing by saying, hey, go sniff. Put your nose on the ground, sniff it out a little bit.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Got it. I like that with the movement. I like that with the go sniff. One thing that you mentioned, and this was just through my recent research that I was like, oh gosh, I didn't even realize that that was a factor, is you mentioned going home and being able to decompress. It was only recently that I realized that some of the things that I have in my home environment, some of the room sprays I've used before, some of the candles that I like to have throughout the home, that these can actually be stressors for dogs. Can you please help me understand? Is that correct? And are there more things that I should keep in mind? Because I want, when the fosters are coming in, for it to be as welcoming as possible. And my home may not be set up that way naturally.
Absolutely. And I want to throw out there too that there's no perfect home environment. There's always going to be something going on that I'm like, I wish this wasn't a factor here, but it is. Um, I want to, I want to, recognize that, and also affirm to fosters that I get that your home might not be perfect, or you might not feel your home is perfect. It is leaps and bounds better than the shelter. And it is so amazing that you have space in your home. Everybody's imperfect home. I've got a very imperfect home, right? Like there's all kinds of things. So um, I always have, I'll talk to people and they'll say, oh, I'd love to foster, but, we have people over from time to time. Like, have you asked your shelter about short-term fosters?
Yeah.
Right? There are options for you to take the dog between the times where you have a lot of people over, or, there's options to kind of accommodate whatever is going on. But as far as like things I'm looking for in the home that might be potential stressors that I might not be thinking about, um, I I think as we look around our house, we tend to at first recognize, like, if I mindfully go around and take an inventory, like you did, and say, oh, dogs go through the world nose first. So some of these candles and some of these things that I really enjoy, and I honestly, I require like a strong smell for me to really enjoy them. The dog can smell it from 5 miles around my house, right? That's how my dog can find my house, is smell the candles and the scentsy that we have going, and all that stuff. Um, but there's also the subtle stressors that kind of require you to sit in your dog's world for a minute, or sit in the dog's world in the home. So, like, listening to what's going on outside the house. Right now, I didn't even think about it for multiple weeks until my dog barked at them yesterday, and I realized that he's been tracking that there's construction happening in the parking lot that's like way back behind my house. Um, there's things in the neighborhood that I could never perceive, and I won't ever be able to perceive, that my dog is absolutely picking up on. So like a female dog goes into heat somewhere in a mile or 5 mile radius. My dog knows that that dog went into heat. That's a stressor, right? It could be a reasonable stressor. And for some dogs, it might be a really intense stressor that there's, especially like an intact male. Female dog goes into heat somewhere. I can't access that. I can't smell it. There's a dog really stressed out next door. That could be, my dog can smell that stress, can smell that cortisol, can smell that adrenaline, can smell those hormones going next door. So there's all these kind of stressors that I might not pick up on. Um, so we have to look at, what is the dog doing that suggests, like, what can I look for? How does this dog communicate that they're starting to feel stress, that they're starting to encounter a challenge? And then how can I help them release that as necessary?
So I'll give you a warning. I'm gonna take it back to a practical standpoint and ask,
Love
as a
it.
new foster can do an inventory check in their house. In just a
Yeah.
second, I'm gonna ask you that question. But before I do, I just want to affirm how much that I love that you are approaching this and making sure, because I did feel shame in the beginning. I was like, what if people learn this? Because I thought I had a great house in the country. I'm so happy to live in a rural area, great for decompression. And then hunting season began. And when hunting season begins, all the neighbor shotguns come out. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, puppies. So yes, I do think it's good for us to realize that there are no perfect fostering homes, and there might be different factors happening with the dogs, and just being able to kind of approach that with some curiosity and awareness that they're going to pick up on smells or sounds that we're not aware of. That being said, as a practical guidance for new fosterers, just like I went through the house and started to tone down the usage of some of the room deodorants. I don't want to make it sound like I live in a stinky house. I don't, but it's just kind of fun. And of the candles, is there anything else, that practical tips for a new foster do, besides to have an overall environmental awareness, that we can slightly tweak or adjust when we're bringing in our first time foster dog?
I like to start really small. So start with, where is one safe space in the house for the foster dog? Is it a crate? Is it an X pen? Is it a room? What is that first kind of space where, when, as soon as they come in the house, this is a safe spot for them to just hang out? And then we look around that room and say, okay, is there cords? Is there electrical cables? Is there kind of like baby proofing, right? Like looking around, is there something that could fall down? Is there something that I really don't want scratched up if they jumped up on it? So taking inventory of a really small space first can kind of help identify what we need to look at as we go bigger in the house. I mean, my big things are are things that I don't want damaged, and that damage can come totally accidentally. Um, but I've had fosters who had dogs that ate a very well intentioned comforter that was in the crate. Right, they put a big comforter in the crate, and the dog swallowed a very substantial bit of the stuffing of it, and then had to, had to have surgery to take that out because it got stuck in there. But there are these kind of well-intentioned things that can come up, and it's I want to say that it's nobody's fault. It's not like I shouldn't be giving dogs blankets. I shouldn't be whatever. But I don't know, kind of there's gonna be some level of risk with anything that I put in the dog's environment, and it's being mindful of what that risk might be, and keeping an eye on some of those things. So, like I said, electrical cables, things that I don't want scratched up, things that I don't want peed on, because first week home there could be an accident or two. Um, you know, having an extra rug down or having some puppy pads, even if it's not a puppy, right? Like having an option for kind of a safe space to go, or setting us up in the kitchen first where there's tile, and just saying this is going to be the first safe place until we know that, like, this is where you go to the bathroom in our house. Because the dog's like, I don't know, I've been going to the bathroom on concrete for the last however long they've been in the shelter, or it has been tile in the shelter and they've been allowed to go, right? Like they've got these sort of substrates that they've learned coming into your home. Where is your expectation that they go to the bathroom?
Yep.
What things are allowed? What things am I allowed to play with? Because at the shelter, I could play with these things that look like slippers, look like shoes, right? And they were just freely available in the environment. In your home, are the rules the same? So, kind of setting up that space with, I want to say, as little as possible in it. And then I introduce things into it and say, hey, this is something that you can have, and this is something you can have, and this bed is yours, and this space is yours, is kind of my preference for how we do that, recognizing that we're not going to get a totally sterile environment in a home that's not reasonable.
Yeah, and my foster puppies always make a beeline for my teddy bear slippers. And I was like, that is completely fair because it looks just like the toys that I give
Yeah.
you. And so
Yeah.
it was training me to say, okay, if you want those to be usable, then put them up somewhere else. But I will say, one thing I like about your tip of, where is that first 3-day decompression room going to be is it makes it so it's less overwhelming to try to figure out the whole home. If we can just create this space, learn the lessons from that space, one of the lessons I learned is my master bathroom is usually my decompression space. And the dogs are going to get into the trash can in there. There's some, different things going on there, so there, it just, but that was nice to learn in that specific area. So I didn't have to hunt it down all over the house too. So it works out both ways, right? It's better for the dog to have that specific space for decompression time. And meanwhile, I get to learn their quirks of what they're going to like play around with. And so it sets us up both for success.
Absolutely. Yeah, that first week of the foster dog being in your home, or the foster puppy being in your home, even more wild. I'm one of those people that give me an adult dog all day. I don't do puppies, and I'm so grateful for people that love puppies and that want to bring a puppy into their home and that want to foster puppies because it's desperately needed. I'm the guy that's like, no, give me the 3-year-old adult pit bull. I'm all
Yeah.
about that. Like, give me somebody that wants to lay on the couch all day. Um, but yeah, getting to know that foster dog for the first week or two can be such a, I don't know, I feel like it feels daunting in theory, but there's such a like beauty to that. There's something so cool about making that connection with this dog and getting to know this individual dog. What do they like to do? What interests them? So they get into the trash can on day one. Do they want a snuffle mat? Would they like a busy bucket? Right, of taking a little plastic bucket and stuffing it full of toys so that they can kind of tear that bucket apart and find those toys in there. Are they constantly sniffing around on the ground for treats? Let's put some treats in an old towel and roll it up so that they can kind of flip the towel around and find those treats in the towel. So looking for, what is this dog sort of offering to do? What are they telling me that they want to do? And how can I set them up to do that in a way that is safe and that is appropriate, and in a way that, again, I'm kind of adding it into the environment and saying, this is for you. This is the appropriate thing for you to do.
And just like we're talking about them progressing through the decompression, you let me know if I'm wrong. You're the expert here, but I've heard that over time with the nervous system that you can build. If you're doing that, if you're applying stressors, not stress stacking, but doing it in the correct way, that over a period of time, a dog can take on more stressful situations with more ease and more calm than they could have a month earlier, a couple months earlier. Is that correct? Is that accurate? And what should we be aware of with respect to that?
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that the dog training community in general and the shelter community as well is talking about building resilience so much. Building that resilience to stress is incredibly important. And we don't do that in the shelter. We know that that is not happening in the shelter. And if you, I don't know, I guess if you like tried to oversimplify it and say, well, they're experiencing a ton of stress in the shelter, they'll get used to it. That's not the kind of stress that we're talking about. That's not the stress that builds resilience. The stress that builds resilience is what we've been creating in the service dog world, because I did service dogs for the last couple of years and I'm doing a little bit at the moment. What we do in the service dog world is we are constantly sort of exposing the dogs to this mild challenge of problem solve this, right? How do I get in the door here? There's a tug rope on it. I usually use the tug rope in this context, but can I use the tug rope here? Yeah, I do. Oh, that was so cool. And we get this reward for it. Oh, that was so cool. There's a relief that comes with that. There's a period after that where I let them hang out. You've done it. Great job. Come back down to baseline. So when we're trying to build that resilience for our dogs, what we're talking about is bringing up that stress level just enough that they go, "Ooh, this is kind of difficult. What am I doing here?" I love to do that through training exercises, teaching sit down, stay, really simple stuff, um, and then bring it back down. Come back all the way to baseline. There's how we build that stress tolerance: is build it up, then back down to baseline.
Okay, let me see if I got it. I'm going to throw something out there, and this is
Yeah.
might not be using the terms correctly. So I'm going to say this is stress of
Yep.
giving them that challenge, recovery of coming back down, and then that whole cycle when it's repeated is resilience. Did I get it?
Yeah, I could be misusing that. I could be misusing that as well. Like I think that the way we're talking about resilience, building resilience in dog training is a little bit hard to get your hands around because it is like there's a lot of pieces to it and there's a lot of complexities to it and there's a lot of, like, well, what do we call this? We haven't really built a construct to be able to talk about this exact thing yet. So what do we call it in the meantime so we can have conversations like this? Um, and I encourage fosters too, like as you're getting into fostering and as you're like, okay, well, I'm playing around with this idea. Is this something, I don't know what to call it, but is this something that we're all playing around with? Like, let's have those conversations and find those communities where you can have those conversations with people, those open conversations, and say, I might be using this term wrong, but this is what I'm playing with. There's so much value to that, and there's so much learning that happens on the human side and learning that we can apply over to dogs when again, I'm like, that sounds like resilience to me. But I'm sure if you talk to another trainer who maybe has been studying specifically resilience for years and years, they might have a different construct for it. But yeah, that is what we're talking about. We're talking about spiking that stress just enough that it's a challenge, bringing us back down to baseline. And then over time saying, okay, well, you handled the challenge at, right, here's baseline. You handled the challenge here. Tomorrow, let's see if you can do this up here, right? You've done 10 challenges that are at this level. Let's see what you do with a little bit tougher challenge, right? And we sort of like, as we get up there, we recognize if the dog, let's say I'm introducing a slightly harder challenge. And what that means, what that looks like is I'm teaching a sit today, and today I'm using a food lure on the nose up over the head to get the dog to sit. Tomorrow, I'm just going to say sit, and I'm not going to give any indication of what sit means. And I want the dog to think about, what does it mean? Well, how did I get that treat yesterday? That's a challenge. That's stress. So that difficulty there, if I see the dog getting really frustrated and going, no, I don't like this. I don't want to play this game. This is like, I'm feeling defeated. Okay, step back. We haven't got there yet. Let's give a little a hand motion or something, right? There's that interim step between the two. So as we are playing around with this, I want to caution people to be ready to stop that sort of increase in stress at any point. Like set yourself up to be able to stop this, give the dog a challenge that they can actually handle. Because if we just keep putting challenges in front of them that they can't handle, we're stress stacking at that point. We're just giving you a bunch of challenges you can't handle and not giving you an opportunity to release.
And we hinted about this earlier, but again, since it's such a big concern, at least it was for me on my journey of fostering, I'm sure there are other fosterers who feel the same way. If there's a foster who's worried that they're moving maybe too slowly or they're not seeing the progress that they want to, what reassurance would you want them to hear?
Slow and steady wins the. I mean, that old adage of slow and steady wins the race is so incredibly applicable to dog behavior and dog training. The biggest problem we run into in dog training, and this is like talking about professional dog trainers who train scent detection for working dogs or agility dogs, competition agility dogs. I guarantee if you go to your local agility instructor who's been training agility for years and you say, how do I slow this whole process down? Their eyes are going to light up and be like, oh my gosh, that is so exactly what you need to be thinking. Like training agility is this very precise, like shaping towards, we put a bowl down on the ground and we reward the dog for glancing at the bowl. And we do that 40 times before we ask the dog to take a step towards the bowl, right? Like it's so slow, and the slower we can get with it, the higher likelihood that what we're communicating is really clear. And there's also really high likelihood that we're allowing the dog to recover between these training sessions when we take things really, really slow.
Devin, I love your approach to this, your thoughtfulness about it, and what you're saying just from an overall perspective makes a lot of sense, even though I didn't think it through that way. So I'm really glad you're willing to take time with us to share from your expertise. If our audience members are interested in following your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm most active on Instagram at Devin the Dog Trainer. But you can also go to freedogtrainers.org and see what we're doing with Free Dog Trainers. That's my nonprofit. We offer totally free dog training to anybody. We do remote support anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, actually. We've got a couple of international clients. We're slowly growing this nonprofit, and it's really built in support of animal shelters. And we have a couple of animal shelters that are actually partners with us, where we have urgent support available for their fosters for situations where day 2, I'm like, I need to talk to a dog trainer. I need to talk to a behavior professional. And that's what we are building with Free Dog Trainers. So if you follow Free Dog Trainers on Instagram, usually that Instagram account is just reposting from my personal account, Devin the Dog Trainer.
That is so very needed. I'm really grateful that you're doing this work. Devin, thank you so much for joining us for our show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Dog Fostering 101, everything I wish I knew when I began fostering. This episode was edited by Make Your Day Richer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to follow us and check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Now go cuddle a pup and have a great day.